Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Bryan Air Live. They're racking up pretty fast now. Got a very special guest this evening. Jonathan Collins joins us. Been wanting to get Jonathan on for a while. He's got a real story to tell, one that I think will resonate with a lot of aviators, not only in South Africa, but around the world. A very important thing we need to chat about. And the conversation is not just going to end here tonight. In fact, this is going to be something that is going to continue for quite a while. And hopefully, I think our big goal, we had a discussion beforehand, myself and my crew, this is something we need to take on board. We need to actually be a part of this whole conversation. So, Jonathan, welcome to Bryan Air Live.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks to all you gents for hosting me this evening. I really look forward to contributing to tonight's podcast.
No, that you will. No doubt about that. I've kept it quite vague, Jonathan. I didn't go out and, tell your story because I'd like you to actually chat about that tonight. It'll sound a lot better coming from the horse's mouth. Obviously, Jonathan is a real aviator. He's an instructor as well, flies for a big local airline. And, like I said, got a bit of a story to tell. Jonathan's had a difficult time with type 1 diabetes, and we'd like to chat about that a bit tonight. But before we get there, Jono, just tell us about your flying. How did you get into it? Where did the passion start? And give us a bit of a story there.
Yeah, Brian, that's a fantastic question. I think everyone you've interviewed has always got a fantastic story to tell of where the aviation bug starts. I was quite fortunate as a latte. I think I never knew a time when I didn't want to be a pilot. I think there's one stage I wanted to be a fireman, but I think everyone goes through that. Basically, I was very influenced from a young age. I was in PE, Eastern Cape, and my dad used to be very good friends with Stu Davidson, who's the father of Patrick Davidson. We all know the local legend, Patrick. And I was very fortunate at a young age to get a flip in his Harvard. You can just imagine how fantastic that must have been. And over Seaview, he's got his residence out there and a grass strip. And we had the most beautiful day. And the Eastern Cape is beautiful most days. And we went for a little aerobatic flip. And it was love at first sight. Other big influence was, I think, my grandfather. He was in the Royal Air Force in World War II. South African pilot that got, South African navigator that got seconded to the Air Force. And he operated in the Far East in India. And there were so many fantastic stories. He told me of his training back on the Dakotas back in the day, his trips up to the Far East India, and then, of course, his actual bombing missions that did. He was part of the 99 Squadron for the Royal Air Force Bomber Command. And he used to share many stories of the missions they conducted, a lot of training, as we always do, like at Samero or wherever that might be. And of course, then active duty, where they used to actually drop ordnance on enemy targets. And I recently came across his logbook, his navigator's logbook, where a very detailed description of how many thousands of pounds of munition were dropped on different types of targets and stuff like that. And I recall a lot of stories that he used to tell us, and unfortunately, even stories about how he lost friends during the war. And so, fantastic background introduction, and that kind of mix of doing an early flight like that on a Harvard and some sort of military interest, especially the aviation military interest, really sparked a huge passion for flying. And I think that's where it started. And I couldn't wait for the day to start flight training. I just couldn't get enough, and I was lucky. I got out to the Algoa Flying Club in PE, and I started some PPR lessons there on weekends and went solo when I turned 18. And after school, I completed my PPL training, and the rest is history. Went off to Port Alfred and did my commercial license there. Had an absolute fantastic time. I think some of my best memories of flying was still learning how to fly, all the mischief you get up to on the side as well. But the experience there, fantastic instructors and fantastic people. And I had some good influences there. I mean, some good people, gave me the right direction to actually go and pursue a career in instruction after qualifying. And it wasn't something that I naturally was I wanted to fly. Everyone wants to go fly a big jet after you get 200 hours comp. But obviously, you need a bit of a reality check at a young age, and that's not going to happen. So when I started doing the grade 3 instructors course, I thought, wow, this is really fun. This is really, really cool. And I did that and was gainfully employed at Port Alfred. And when you start to actually get into the instruction, you actually kind of realize, wow, there's a big gap between what you learn as a student, as a commercial pilot student, and what you actually operationally need to be able to do as a commercial pilot. And that was surprising to me, actually. And it was quite a cool challenge now to have to master that kind of theory, academics, as well as doing the flying, to be able to teach it to the future generation of pilots that we would receive out there in Port Alfred. And so the foundation of my career is basically instruction, which is pretty cool. And I was in a very unique position within 43 Air School to be asked to join PTC Aviation in Port Elizabeth, which was my hometown, which was exciting. And it was something completely new. We had no idea what we were getting into in reality. We heard of this thing, we were going to get a jet simulator, 737 simulator, first of its kind in South Africa. And we're going to do some training over there, and then we're going to be doing the actual facilitation on that device, which was a completely new concept in South Africa. This is in about 2014. Naturally, in Europe, they've been doing stuff like this for many, many years. But in South Africa, in a South African context, it was very, very, very modern and new and fresh. I got some jet training there, but it was quite an intense course where we had to go through a full type rating with a lot of add-ons to make us proficient in terms of how to handle the jet, and then of course eventually present the training. But we were led by fantastic training captains at the national carrier at the time. They gave us the best mentorship you could ask for, and essentially we became incredibly proficient. And naturally, through my experience there, as well as customers that would come to the air school there, PTC, I was very lucky to be seconded to my current operator and eventually get gainfully employed at my current operator as a first officer flying the domestic routes in South Africa. And that's the basic summary of it. And it all started with that Harvard flight with Patrick Davidson. And I actually saw him in the Algoa Flying Club a week before my diagnosis. Let me think about it. His step sister, there's a bit of an age gap, but his step sister had just gone solo. So obviously Stu Davidson was celebrating there, and Patrick Davidson was celebrating there. My dad, I invited with, because I knew Stu and Patrick would be there. And my dad said to them, Stu, you cost me a hell of a lot of money. So that's the basic mantra of where I ended up and where I am now today with you guys.
That's an awesome story, Jono. You've certainly had a very fulfilling and exciting career so far. To that note, I must congratulate you for being the first Boeing pilot to be welcomed on our show. Up to now, we've only had.
I should have won my bank.
Yeah, we've only had CRJ and Airbus drivers, so I think it's because all the Boeing guys are probably too busy working. But
perhaps. I wish I was with them, but here I am.
Yeah, we'll be sure to send you that first Boeing pilot on the Bryan Air podcast badge.
That's exciting. I look forward to that. Send it in the mail.
I love the fact that you started out wanting to be a fireman. That's the most important step for every pilot you can ever have. And then hit 43 Air School down in Port Alfred. I mean, I was down there a couple of times over a couple of years visiting a girlfriend that was flying there. And I understand the stuff that got on, and it wasn't all training.
Yeah, as long as she wasn't a Port Alfred local, then it's okay.
Not a local.
Brett also wanted to be a fireman. That's why he's wearing his fireman's jacket there tonight.
I've got my fire painting behind me. I'm still I'll become a pilot one day.
It looks lit, as they would say.
Jono, what year were you doing your training there?
I think I started in 2010 in Port Alfred. 2010.
Okay. Yeah. I was at Progress in PE. So Stu Davidson had his Sea Fury. I'm not sure if he's still got it.
Yeah,
but,
he does.
Yeah, that used to fly over every now and again, and it's awesome to hear those stories. I could check Ryan really listening to what you had to say there, because I think everyone's got a story. They all have certain parallels, but there's always that one little thing that that bites you, and then you go from there. But then there's obviously a bit of luck involved from there, isn't it? I mean, ultimately we all qualify with the same thing, and then there's a bit of luck involved.
Yes, I'll tell you, I've had an incredibly lucky career to end up at my current operator. Very privileged. The opportunities that have presented themselves, I kind of just grab them like Bryan Air grabs the rugby ball and then just run. So I've been very, very lucky, very fortunate to get where I am, and I consider myself very privileged. But also a lot of hard work, to achieve what one has to achieve, especially in a Boeing type of environment. So it's a hard workload. Drinking from a fire hose in the training, it was quite intense. But hard work and perseverance pays off.
Yeah, for sure. It's isn't flying is a strange game in a way. Doing some lectures with some guys the other day, and you explain, if you had to explain aviating to a non-aviator, it kind of everything is a bit back to front. You start flying small aircraft with no equipment, with no one to help you, and then as you progress in your career, you start flying a bigger aircraft with someone probably more competent than yourself, with a whole lot of fancy equipment, and the curve goes in another way. But I want to get into it, Jono, early on, because the time does fly here.
Let's do it.
You've got a bit of you've got something that we want to get behind, and I want to hear your story. So we heard how you got into flying here, and but through your career, something obviously happened, and you found yourself in a peculiar, very difficult position right now. Can 100%. we jump into that straight away?
Let's jump straight into it. So I was operating in February last year, 2020, just pre-pandemic, and I started to feel a little bit tired. I was going to the bathroom a lot and to urinate. I was very thirsty. I had like a thirst I could not quench, and I had lost a little bit of weight quite dramatically. And my symptoms, with anyone, you go to Dr. Google and you start checking what's going on, and you start to Google your symptoms, and it says, well, diabetes. It didn't seem right, didn't add up for me at the time. And also perhaps I was in a bit of denial as to what the conditions might be indicating, because it also could indicate something completely different. Anyway, eventually I was convinced to go see a dischem. A little dischem tunny was taking my blood pressure. She was checking my respiration on my finger, and eventually she was doing my blood sugar, and she said, "Oh, I see you're a diabetic." So I was like, "No, I'm not." She's like, "Well, actually, yeah, your blood sugar is sitting at 33, and it's meant to be 5." So that was master caution engine fire. So I was very surprised by that, and she said to me, "Yeah, you need to go to hospital right now." So I said, "Well, look, no disrespect, you're a nurse. I'll go see my GP first." And I went to my GP, and he's like, "You need to go to hospital right now. I'm going to call you an ambulance." So I was very surprised at how serious the situation was. I didn't realize it, but I was admitted. And the next thing I knew, I was on a drip with insulin being delivered to me. And insulin is what I needed to bring my blood sugar down. Anyway, so that was the very shocking discovery. And initially, I was told that I was a type 2 diabetic, which is quite a common thing, type 2 diabetes in South Africa or around the world even. It was a huge disappointment, but I knew, okay, with type 2, I could still reapply for my medical, because I had lying in hospital there, had been Googling the cats and cars and the different protocols available. 2 weeks later, subsequently, after notifying my company and being taken off the roster for a bit, I went for another checkup after being discharged, and the doctor casually just said, "No, he was busy talking about what my blood work said." And he's like, "No, that's very normal for a type 1 diabetic." And my eyes were like, "What? But you told me I was type 2. He's like, "No, you actually definitely type 1. And how they determine that is through a a test to determine if you have these antibodies. And I'll talk a little bit about what type 1 and type 2 is in a second. And these antibodies indicated I most definitely have type 1 diabetes, which is a autoimmune disease that no one really knows how it occurs. It used to occur quite predominantly in children. Some of you might have, and some of your audience members might have a friend or a family member at a young age, infant or young child or even teenager, that develops diabetes, whether they're relatively normal otherwise. They're not obese, overweight, and they don't drink 5 liters of Coca-Cola a day. But effectively, they don't really know what the cause is. And they say there's some sort of genetic predisposition, and then something triggers it, but they don't know what that is, because perhaps if they knew, they could either vaccinate against it. That's a hot topic at the moment, vaccinations, or they could try and prevent it. So effectively, I had this autoimmune condition called type 1 diabetes that needs to be treated with insulin. Now, why is this such a big issue? What is the problem about it? Many people have diabetes and operate day-to-day activities and continue with their lifestyle. The difference is the treatment. So type 1 diabetes has to be treated with a insulin drug. In this particular case, an insulin drug, it has to be injected. And there you can see it for your viewers. All right, so that would be injected. Traditionally, that's how it's done. Got to shake your hands here to get that needle back on, the needle cap. And type 2 diabetes, which is a completely different type of diabetes, doesn't necessarily need to be treated with insulin. It can be treated, it might need to be, but perhaps it could be treated with a lifestyle intervention, also oral medication. The problem is for type 1 that insulin, the drug insulin, or the hormone, because it's replacing your pancreas's ability to produce it, lowers your blood sugar. And if you take too much, which is not often, but if you take too much or you eat too little carbohydrate, effectively you could become hypoglycemic, and that's a big problem for the flight deck. There's a risk there. To go a bit more into type 1 diabetes, just a little bit more physiology, as doctors might say, what actually happens is this trigger mechanism, whatever it might be, it could be a viral or something that you're exposed to in the environment, it somehow tells your immune system to start attacking your own pancreas. And your pancreas is responsible for producing insulin in these cells called the beta cells. And without them, over a period of time, the insulin becomes less and less and less in your body, and your blood sugar goes up and up and up. And effectively, you start presenting symptoms of type 1 diabetes, which is what happened to me. In order to counteract that, you need this drug, this insulin drug. And effectively, without it, you would die. So it's quite an intense diagnosis to have, and it's a chronic condition, so it's lifelong. There's no cure for it. You can't actually take medication or have some sort of therapeutic intervention that would cure it. You could have a transplant, but eventually most transplants always end up in failure over many periods of years, perhaps. So ultimately, the most common treatment is with insulin. Well, it has to be with insulin. The Civil Aviation Authority really don't like type 1 diabetes in South Africa. And that's where the next phase of the story comes in, because I notified the SACAA, as you have to, because it's law, and notified them that I now, or notified my dame, who subsequently told them that I have type 1 diabetes. And I got the letter that no pilot ever wants to receive in their life. Comes from the SACAA, and it's a casual Thursday morning, and you get a notification email. Hi there, you are now declared permanently medically unfit to fly. Thanks. You may appeal. Goodbye. And that's it. You're done. That's your career. Game over. Insert R5 coin. So I was pretty devastated. I was to say lightly, I was a little bit down about it. And I now. I was still quite young at the time, only 28 years of age at diagnosis, and I still felt like I have a huge passion and a massive amount to give to the aviation community, for myself, but also others. There's other people that, if this had happened to me as a lightie, that flight with Stu Davidson wouldn't have progressed into a flying career, which I'm so passionate about today. So I took it upon myself to conduct the research required to determine what would it take to get me back into the flight deck. And fortunately for me, at the advance of technology and modern therapeutics, countries, modern countries like the United States of America, Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia, and Austria is another one. They have implemented procedures and protocols to allow type 1 diabetics to fly, to make them safe enough to fly. And how they do that is with modern technology interventions and continuous glucose monitoring, which is, and I can't show you now because I'd have to take my shirt off. Maybe some of the females might enjoy that, but maybe not. But on my arm over here, I wear a patch basically that senses my blood sugar continuously, and it sends it to my phone or my watch, and ultimately I can check my blood sugar all the time. I don't know if I can get it right there. There you can see
Hold
it
up there just a second.
There we go. So I've just had supper now, and my blood sugar is sitting at 8.7 over there, which is perfectly normal for even people without type 1 diabetes. So that is a huge advantage. Now I could physically see continuously what my blood sugar is. Other types of interventions are things like this insulin pump. I'm going to just get it in there. You might want to enlarge again. And this is connected to me via a port that goes, at the moment, it's in my leg. And ultimately, this then reads what my blood sugar is all the time. It then determines, well, my blood sugar is increasing, so it's going to deliver more insulin to my body. I would also obviously manually input it, like you program a flight management computer and you put in waypoints there or fuel figure. I'd manually program how many carbohydrates I would ingest. So I carb count on every single meal that I have in order to tell the pump how many units of insulin to deliver. I call it I call it an APU, a auxiliary pancreas unit, which is very similar to the power unit we have on our aircraft. And this type of technology is very it's not freely available. It's very accessible. It does cost a lot of money. This particular unit is incredibly expensive, in the region of 40,000 rand. And the continuous glucose monitoring is also incredibly expensive. Some of it is covered by medical aid, some of it isn't. But this opens up the door in terms of accessibility to being medically certified to have a class 1 medical. Other countries have proven that it is safe to do. And I'm trying to, and we're having some very reasonable success with the SACAA. I'm trying to implement those legislative practices and protocols in South Africa. And I'm glad to say that we have made significant progress with the SACAA over the last 8 months. There's still a long way to go. We're not there yet. We're very close, but we from being permanently medically unfit to fly, there is a very real possibility that the Civil Aviation Authority are going to entertain this type of flying with a new protocol that's being developed as we speak.
That's fantastic, Jono. Three things I want to just quickly say. Firstly, there's no disputing that you definitely are an instructor. The way you explained that is quite a.
No.
He's sold. It's 100%. I mean, it's diabetes type 1 for dummies, and I certainly it is a valid explanation. My brother was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was just 10 years old.
Okay.
So he's had it for the last 25 years. I've had front row seats to the whole story and seen what it's put him through. And now that he gets older, he's obviously battling a little bit more with the effects that it causes and everything. But there's something about you guys. There's a true resilience. The guys that are putting up this kind of fight, and it's wonderful to see that you're actually not taking this lying down. And actually doing something about trying to get back into the sky. It's wonderful. It really is remarkable to see that kind of gusto come out of someone like yourself, where in a world now where a lot of guys are just upset because they've just lost their jobs and everything, but you've kind of lost more than that, but putting up a bigger fight. And man, I'm wishing you all the best. For it would be great to see you in the sky soon, having that sorted out.
Right, thanks so much, Dave. Please continue. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. No, the last thing I was going to say is just I think you've got more devices plugged into you than Brian's MacBook trying to run the podcast.
It's always interesting at a party. This thing warns me if I maybe have too little insulin or too much, or if the battery starts getting low and I start beeping. I'm very bionic at the moment. So it's quite an interesting story to tell and pull out and show people what happens with this pump. But it's been it's this type of technology, really has changed the life of, for me, it's made the condition and the management of the condition incredibly easy. It's almost like flying on autopilot. It makes its own automatic interventions if it gets too high or too low, which is great. But traditionally, and for the first few months of my condition, I was managing it with multiple daily injections, which are not painful, and they are of no significant interference in my day-to-day activity, but slightly less meaningful in the long run to prevent complications, which are still possible though.
Yeah. It's amazing the technology available now and what it does.
I would say that this continuous glucose monitoring has definitely opened the door to allow this to happen. The Federal Aviation Authority mandates that you have to use this technology for a Class 1 medical air. Other countries like the United Kingdom are still using a finger stick method where you would prick your finger and use a blood sample. So that's slightly more tedious. And if you imagine your first officer or your captain in the cockpit is a bit afraid of blood, you might actually make him incapacitated. But ultimately, they're moving towards continuous glucose monitoring as well.
John, I just wanted to ask you, when you first were diagnosed, and it was the Brian, the rinky-dink nurse in Port Alfred, what did you think? Did you just she doesn't know what she's talking about? Obviously, it was a double whammy when your doctor said so. I mean, how did you feel? How did you just want to give up? Where did the resilience come from? I mean, we've got the comment there. Why didn't you just walk away? What drove you?
So that resilience is such a powerful word, and something that I've had to lean on a lot. And it was even in our recurrency cycle right before the diagnosis, we were talking about how we can build resilience in our pilots. So the initial reaction was obviously, they talk about 5 stages of dealing with something hectic in your life, and I think I went through all 5 of those in the matter of days. Ultimately, I was incredibly shocked. I couldn't believe it, and the questions like why me and how could this happen, and I was in a total disbelief and total shock that this had happened to me. I don't particularly want to do anything else in my life besides fly airplanes, and that's with any other pilot. You really want to if you're a passionate guy and you want to contribute to the community so much, you don't want to give up. But yes, I really had a huge psychological challenge, not just getting up in the morning, but just facing the day, in the sense that I really just wanted my medical back like that. But obviously, we know this is the month before the pandemic, and everyone's communicating through emails and Zoom and stuff like that. It just wasn't happening as quickly as one would like. I had to kind of realize that right now the path that I'm on isn't really in my hands. It's in the Civil Aviation Authority's hands, and the Civil Aviation Authority's hands, and the powers that be. And I can sympathize. A lot of people get very frustrated very quickly, and there are moments where I am frustrated when I don't get an email back. But ultimately, they're also dealing with the pandemic. And I've kind of had to resort to the fact that this process is going to take a while. In February next year, it'll be 2 years since my diagnosis. But I've seen incredible change so far, and it's keeping me upbeat. And I'm very hopeful, and maybe cautiously optimistic that this legislation that we're drafting will be gazetted by the end of the year. I myself have been fortunate enough when I appealed their decision. Yes, and I wrote a long appeal. I wrote 14 pages of appeal, and then I attached 80 more pages on top of that, I think, total, of all the different legislations over the world motivating why this should happen. And when I sent in the appeal 6 months later, eventually I got a decision from them saying that you're no longer permanently medically unfit. You are now temporarily medically unfit for a period of 1 month. But when they sent that, they clinically were inaccurate in their presentation of that letter anyway. But it was a huge relief to see that they have done not a 180, like a 170. We're kind of there. Now we've got to develop the protocol so we can actually get me back in the air. So I won't lie to you, Brett. It was an incredible, huge challenge, something I would never, ever want anybody to go through. But ultimately, it's the cards that have been played, and the only way you can do it is tackle it the best you can. And that's where that resilience has had to come in. And I've had to exercise a lot of that, a lot of patience, and we're getting there. We're getting there day by day. And these kind of platforms and reaching out to these kind of individuals, the audience that you have, has really been a very positive experience for me. So I've been very grateful for that. Initially, I didn't want anyone to know. I was actually very embarrassed. I didn't even tell my parents for the first, I think it was, I don't want to say 6 months, but it was close to that. Because they are obviously so proud that, wow, this guy's a pilot and he's doing well for himself. In the middle of the pandemic, it's a bit rough as well. But I didn't disclose it to them for a couple of months because I was actually quite embarrassed myself, and for other reasons, because of the pandemic, no one was getting anywhere with the SACAA. So didn't want to encourage drama. Sorry,
there's something to be said about being vulnerable. When you eventually get to that stage and you actually say, guys, I'm vulnerable. I'm gonna tell you what's going on. I can just imagine the relief on that. I mean, it's beyond hats off to you, but you know what? It's hats off to the SACAA that they're looking at and they're moving so far. And if you get this through, the change it's gonna and the impact it's gonna have to pilots in this country with type 1 diabetes is going to be phenomenal.
Brett, thanks. And that's the thing, during my journey so far, and I'm hoping I find more, I've only come across maybe a handful of other pilots that have reached out to me, about 10, maybe 15, that have had conditions like this type 1 diabetes. Some of them at airways, some of them at helicopter commercial pilots, others that are still trying to get into aviation. And I think, and I reflect very strongly on myself, I was very lucky. I never knew a day where I didn't want to be a pilot. I was always set on being a pilot. Now, imagine if I had this condition at the age of 6 or 10 or 18 or whatever it might have been, I would never have been able to fulfill my dream of being involved in the aviation industry. And that would have crushed me. So if we can get this passed, I'm hopeful that will open the door to other future generations of pilots, the people that were previously prevented and prohibited from flying. They will now be able to do this, which would be great.
But isn't it an amazing thing? Sorry, Brett, jumping in front of you there.
Go for it.
I mean, could there be a better guy to actually be talking about this than Jonathan has just spoke about? I've never been explained it like this before. I mean, you've got a knack for talking about this, and obviously it's not even a passion that you're talking about. This is an underlying thing that you're talking about, and I mean, it's coming from experience and knowledge and all sorts of things. And to hear you talk about it actually kind of makes me emotional on this side. When I spoke to Ryan the other day when we were planning on getting you on the show, I could tell with Ryan how excited he was to get you on the show. He answered the question straight away. No, John has got to be on this week, and that's because I think Ryan's dealt with this for a long time in his family, and he's seen big ups and downs. And Brett asked the question, how did you feel that day when you got told you no longer have a medical? And I think let's stop it there for a second. Maybe we need to work on certain things and maybe even make the SACAA aware of certain things as well, that possibly by sending a message like that is probably not the best thing to do in 2020, 2021. There are other ways to do it. So, wind your neck in a little bit, do some research before you go and potentially put someone on a bridge. Because that's a shocker. It's a shocker. There's no excuse for that. You should never be given something in life from a financial institution, a medical, where you're writing off hope. That to me is unacceptable. So something needs to be done about that straight away. And maybe we must jump on that, guys, and put a bit of pressure there. Because Jonathan, I mean, you can tell what great. I mean, I haven't even met you, Jono, in real life, but you know, I really like you immensely. And you're doing things absolutely perfect, obviously, with the SACAA. You've got to get them on board. You've got to get them to understand. Just a question: you mentioned protocols and that around the rest of the world. What do the FAA do about it? What happens in the States?
So the States actually one of the more recent ones to actually jump aboard or legislate this protocol. Some history: Canada was the first country to certify to be okay, followed by the UK and some countries around Europe. The FAA only as recently as 2019 have actually legislated the protocol. It's been in process with them for many years. There's been some lawsuits even, because the Americans love to sue each other there. And Australia is also just after about 2020, the first type 1 diabetic got his class 1 then. But yeah, I think that we, you know,
what's the reason? Sorry, John, I'm jumping. Yeah. What's the reason though? What is the safety? You've got all the equipment. You're taking the right stuff. You're doing everything. Why would they take it away?
So let's start off by saying that the SACAA document of aviation medicine prohibits it. So if a country wants to approve a protocol, they would have to file a bit of a difference. Now, the SACAA document of medicine, or whatever it's called, is a 2012 document that doesn't get updated every year. So it's a bit outdated. This technology has only been implemented in the last couple of years. South Africa, when I motivated it to them, I said to them, you know, the Civil Aviation Authority on a global platform is actually perhaps one of the better civil aviation authorities and the more advanced. We sometimes express a lot of frustration with licensing and other elements that we see on a day-to-day level as pilots. But on a global platform, they're far better than other developing nations out there. And they've been incredibly progressive with doing this change of heart from disqualifying me to perhaps saying it's temporary disablement to now legislating this or drafting this legislation. To answer the original question, why is it a problem? Why was it actually banned? Quite simply that we didn't have the visibility to determine, okay, cool, if you have too much insulin or too little carbohydrate and your blood sugar crashes, you won't be able to see that happening. And if your blood sugar gets too low and become hypoglycemic, there's a risk of incapacitation. And obviously that is a major risk on the flight deck. The inverse could happen, that if you take too little insulin and if you have too much carbohydrate, your blood sugar could go the other way, it could go too high. While that's not necessarily as immediate of a risk, the long-term complications for a type 1 diabetic are not good, and it could result in impairment. But ultimately, the major risk is the low blood sugar and becoming incapacitated during a critical phase of flight. Now, SACAA, in their document, in that same document, they talk about having a less than 1% risk in terms of incapacitation. And that's what we and the other countries have proven, that there is a less than 1% risk of a type 1 diabetic becoming incapacitated because of the advances of this type of technology. I can predict, using my cell phone and all the other things, I can predict if my blood sugar is going to get too low. It actually sounds an alarm. It warns me, which is fantastic in the flight deck, because now I'm alert, the co-pilot or the captain is alert, and we can now make an intervention, which would perhaps mean eating or consuming more readily absorbable carbohydrate. So effectively, that mitigates the risk that you would traditionally have. It's also a lot about how well you take care of yourself. You get type 1 diabetics that eat whatever they want, and they don't care, and they don't exercise, and they don't take care of themselves, and that could perhaps result in complications and also just very poor blood sugar control. If you are a disciplined person, and luckily pilots by way of profession are quite disciplined individuals, if you've got a disciplined person, you can control it very, very well and actually be in blood sugar ranges very, very normal for non-diabetic. You'll see an excursion here or there, and that's fine. But on the flight deck, if you're monitoring it properly, just like you watch your EGT gauge on takeoff, it's actually fine. You can manage the flight perfectly and safely with no risk of incapacitation. And I believe the CAA, the South African Civil Aviation Authority, have caught on to what other countries are doing, and they are satisfied that this is a safe practice to implement in a protocol.
Yeah, I have a good feeling that you probably will win this fight, Jono. I mean, I've flown with guys in my career. I mean, back in the day, going back 2004, somewhere around there, I flew with a guy who actually had a pacemaker. He was, 65 odd at the time. So, he still flew commercially with a pacemaker. So he got by that somehow. Other guys out there who are flying with hearing aids. I know of a few guys out there that got, hearing, medicals passed with hearing aids, obviously follow protocols, spare batteries, etc., etc. Things like thyroid problems, pulmonary sarcoidosis, I think that's how you say it.
One eye.
We have
there's guys an operator that has one eye. Yeah.
In fact, I even know of a guy who was a paraplegic that was flying, obviously privately, in his own airplane a couple of years ago. But, it is possible. I can't see that a type 1 diabetic can be labeled as completely incapacitated. So, I'm pretty confident, and I have high hopes that you'll get this right with the CAA. I mean, definitely sounds like you're putting the right amount of motivation behind it.
We have very high hopes. Thanks very much, Ryan. Appreciate it.
And I hope that even if you don't get it right this time, you don't stop. Because writing a 40-page justification plus another 80 pages deserves to be seen 100 times if necessary. So I don't think this is a battle that can ever be given up on. Sorry, go, John.
No, go for it, Brett. Sorry.
No, I was doing some research onto other conditions that are considered, that you're going to lose your medical with, and one condition there that I'm a bit concerned, personality disorder that is severe enough to have repeatedly manifest itself in overt acts. Ryan and Bryan are actually both in trouble. I just don't understand how they got past that one.
Yeah, my quite polar personality is catching up with me.
Sorry, my other personality just engaged. What are you saying there, Brett?
I think, it's inevitable that the fight is going to be won, and after it is won, you're going to have. You're going to be a sought after guy, Jono. I think, traditionally our CAA do follow suit. If the rest of the world has made the change, it's inevitable that with support like yourself and with people like yourself pushing the agenda, it'll happen sooner rather than later. Obviously having a community is quite important. So I'm going to talk about that a bit now. But is there, you got that original letter. Is there any sort of, did you know of any sort of community? I'm not talking about, I suppose Mayday would be one who you could contact to talk about, or is there a gap in the, is there, gap's probably not the right word, is there a requirement now to set up a community where, people, youngsters that may be going through the same thing can actually come and talk to someone like you? Can you imagine a youngster getting a similar letter and then finding out that a guy like you is actually around, that he can actually phone and give a phone, and then get some information that, hey, don't worry, this has been going on for a while and I'm 10 steps ahead of you, but join the train, 100%, can people get hold of you? Do they get hold of someone else? What's the right channel?
So on an individual basis, people more than welcome to contact me. I've got one page, pilotswithdiabetes.sa, and that can be found on both Instagram and Facebook. Please get in contact with me. Happy to have you guys chat. And I'm just the tip of the iceberg. You only see one person on this presentation now, but there are probably a couple hundred odd pilots out there over the years that have lost their medical due to a condition, and were just unable to continue flying because they didn't know how to challenge the CAA. The technology might not have been there, whatever the circumstances might have been. And that is an incredibly difficult time for a pilot. You're very proud of your career, your profession. You've spent a lot of money investing in yourself and your career, and to have one little letter tell you that you're no longer allowed to do that anymore is incredibly difficult and challenging. So perhaps, and I think I know where you're going with this, Bryan, it might be appropriate for the community as a whole, be it a pilot out there in your audience, or people that you know of, your audience might know of, who have lost their medicals. We could come together and chat, and like have one of those community meetings where we could talk and share experiences and strategies and feelings, and be part of a community where we can uplift each other. Every single pilot, to a degree, is perhaps going through some sort of mental challenge or emotional challenge. A lot of pilots are exposed to COVID, their companies not being operating anymore, dismissals and other actions that are happening. Everyone's kind of got an elevated level of stress right now. I'd say that you walk down the hallways of any operator right now, or in OR Tambo, everyone's kind of like trying to figure out what the next step's going to be in their life. And a lot of guys are even saying, I can't handle the stress. I'm actually going to go farm now or do something else. But there needs to be a bit more emphasis on perhaps our mental health and the stability thereof in our professional careers. And of course, then if something goes wrong, unfortunately, this has happened to me, and I've bet firsthand that it's an incredibly tough challenge, and it's resulted in some difficult situations, which I wish there was more of a platform for us to talk openly like this and actually exchange these kind of ideas.
Jonathan, I just want to clarify something. You said that the disqualifying medical conditions are set by ICAO. Is that correct?
I'd say that you probably find a list there. Yeah.
So is ICAO the organization that has identified these ones, or is it various CAAs and ICAO is taken from there? The reason why I ask is if ICAO is the controlling body, and most airlines around the world are following what the disqualifying medical conditions are, surely ICAO should be reviewing this and saying, America, Britain, Austria, now potentially South Africa, we're gonna leave it on with a disclaimer. However, if you are on this, you have a medical. Surely that should be happening.
Brett, I couldn't agree more. So ultimately, in our particular context, the technological advances have been very rapid and very quick. So you're 100% right. They should update that list. I think it might require me to, when COVID's over, book a trip to Montreal, Canada, and go visit them there and speak to them in their French language and tell them that, we need to update your manual because you're prohibiting a whole generation of pilots from flying. But I think it does start. I'm very fortunate that the state difference can be filed here, and on an individual state basis, we can get legislation promulgated here. But it does actually need to go back as far as ICAO. And there are probably other conditions that also have perhaps that new therapeutic interventions that prevented people from flying in the past, but now it's not such a big deal. I don't know of any offhand, but you got to look back to some of our more famous aces of World War II. We have Douglas Bader busy flying a Spitfire in the clouds above Germany with no arms and no legs. So,
exactly.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Brett brings up an important point there, though, because Jono, the world has changed a bit in this. I'd say the last year as well, and maybe there's a bit of a call. What could I say? There's a call to say, why don't we even get together and get hold of the right people at ICAO now and have a conversation with them before you even go to Montreal, because you don't have to go there anymore. You can contact you can contact whoever you want right now over a platform like this or Zoom or anything, and you've got a genuine request. I'd be willing to try and facilitate that. I'm sure there's some people in South Africa with a few connections in ICAO that we could get on to the right people. And maybe if there's anyone listening tonight, just drop me an email. It's there in the show notes, and let's maybe try and make this work. Because the one thing I have noticed, you can actually contact whoever you want these days. You can get hold of emails, numbers, you can set up calls, and you would never have rocked up in Montreal to go meet the head honcho there of SACAA, but he's far more likely to take a 10-minute Zoom call with you. Maybe we gotta push that angle. What's interesting with you, John? We spoke about a community and setting up a community, and a lot of these communities are great, and they're a platform of support. However, you are obviously a very, very proactive guy, and most communities like that lack the proactivity. And that's where I think you come in. You've got, you speak well, well educated. Gray, I think you went to, I checked, Ryan told me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The cat's out the bag, guys.
Just to back that up, I mean, like Bryan mentioned earlier, we haven't had the opportunity to meet face to face, John. Unfortunately, neither of us. So obviously, to find a bit of background, I had to Facebook stalk you a bit, and that's. I know
Did you send me one of those? Did you send me one of those Facebook posts?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, that's something we have available to us now to find out more about people. But that's where it struck me what a passionate aviator you are, and to back up what Bryan said as well, if you're looking for a platform to work from, there's no doubt we will be behind you 100%, because we're screaming from the same rooftop here. We advocate every week on our podcast, guys, get positive, stay resilient, get out there, fight the fight, do what you got to do. And if it means that you need guys to get on a Zoom call with the main coordinator there in Montreal with you, we'll be right there, and
we'll do it, man.
Do what we can to support you as much as possible, man.
I'm so grateful for that. I feel that sense of community just from the 4 individuals here, and just the speech bubbles popping up in the text, and I can see that the whole community and your audience is behind my cause. And I feel it, and it's fantastic. I really, really appreciate it. It's very, very kind of you guys.
One of the hardest things in going on a crusade is going alone, or thinking you're alone. At the end of the day, you're actually never alone. And just by speaking out, you realize how many people are on the exact same crusade. So you have our support here 100%. Anything we can do, we will do. And as you can see from our listeners, just like within 30 seconds, there's 2 contacts. So hey, thanks for everyone listening. It's brilliant. I love that.
Thanks so much, guys.
You know what, as well, Jono, it's not just people battling with diabetes or any medical condition. Every single pilot in the world has an underlying worry every 6 months or a year when you go for a medical. It's a permanent threat. And I know, and someone asked to not mention his name, lost his medical a while ago, but he for years never went to a doctor, did anything, despite knowing he had a major problem, because he was too scared he was going to lose his pilot medical. So he was actually willing to look death in the face just so that he could keep his medical. You mentioned the you didn't even tell your folks for a while because there's this element of like shame. I mean, what the hell is that there for? But I would have felt the same thing. It's like you almost feel like you're letting people down, which is just ludicrous. So I think there's every single pilot in the world is there behind you on this one, and we got to keep pushing this. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about this in the beginning of the show. We're going to mention your page, where to contact you. Every single podcast we do, we're gonna do that. We'll put your details in our show notes, so that'll go out on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube on every single show. So twice a week that'll be out. And we'll keep it on this ticket tape as well that goes around. So if anyone needs to contact you, they can. And Jono, we want to keep hearing about the story, because what we don't want, if you hit a brick wall at the SACAA, then we need to get a few people behind you to push this wall down. And I think I'd like to think we're the right guys to help you push that wall down. Ryan's always keen to to get into a bit of a brawl, particularly after a couple of drinks. So
please don't let him loose. Please do not let Barak loose.
so we are guys, man, and we really do want to support this cause. For some, I've got no one in my family that's got diabetes, touch wood, and it's not even that. It's just over the years you fly with guys, and we spoke about Mark Dutton earlier, Ryan. Great pilot at SACAA, also Air Force guy, absolute legend. I mean, Mark lost his medical a couple of times. Also, like you, he never gave up. He kept battling, kept fighting, and ended up getting his medical back, and then lost again. But you hear and you see these stories all the time. But man, the world is a funny place where if someone was going to lose your medical, like yourself, you are just the right guy with the right acumen, the right things, the right sort of temperament to push this across the line. And youngsters, or people, not even youngsters, anyone that's lost their medical right now, man, they've got a good spokesman in you. It's been an absolute privilege talking to you tonight. I'm not going to stop now. I've just extended the time a little bit so we can go over an hour, because I think it's an important one.
Bryan, thanks so much. It's been absolutely fantastic. And please, if there's anybody, absolutely anything. I mean, I had a guy contact me off my page about a sleep apnea condition. That's not related at all, but he lost his medical for it, temporary period. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's members in your audience right now that have sleep apnea and don't know about it. So watch out. But please, if there's anybody who wants to get in touch, feel free to hit me up on the social media platforms, and we can have a chat.
Yeah, man. Like I mentioned earlier, I've had front row seats to this condition of yours my whole life. My brother, I'll just chat about him a little bit. Unfortunately, like I said, he was diagnosed with it at a very, very young age. So I think he also had great aspirations to become a pilot one day. And like you said, when that happened to him, it was kind of, you could see how it destroyed his soul. And I think it's taken him many, many years to try and recover from that. With the result is, he probably made some silly life decisions, and I don't think was as disciplined as you obviously are, and he's sort of paid the price for it. But he is, I've mentioned him before on my social media, he has turned the corner in such a way where he's showing resilience like I cannot believe. Unfortunately, it got to the extent where he lost the lower half of his right leg a few months ago, and I got a fright because I thought, shucks, man, this is now going to really, really, turn things south in a bad way. But from that, he made a statement just after he got his, he was getting ready to go and fit his prosthetic leg. And he was saying to us as a family, he says, I'm going to go and get my leg fitted, and I'm going to walk out of that doctor's office. And I still felt bad because I made the chirp to him. I said to him, listen, man, don't overdo it. I get being, positive, upbeat. You're going to overcome this. You'll come right. I said to him, but, don't be silly. You're going to overdo it. Geez, man, he had me eating my words, because 2 weeks later, he fitted the prosthetic leg, and he walked out of the doctor's office.
Fantastic.
The guy still said, the doctor that did it for him still said he was the first patient in over 20 years that's ever done that. So, again, it just proves the point. If you've conditioned yourself, you've geared yourself mentally, and you make yourself a promise that you're going to overcome anything that's thrown your way, nothing's impossible. And, it's just such a strong message that we've got to get out there. And we certainly stand behind that all the way,
Incredible story.
I love that story, because you always underestimate the strength of someone who's going through something difficult, and you always want to protect them, like you did with your butt. Don't do this, take it easy. But the strength that he had at that time, it's 1 minute mile. It could never be broken until it was broken. And your butt did that. You're doing it for type 1 diabetics. Once you break that mold and you break that barrier, she's like the floodgates open. It's an amazing human ability, human nature.
It's actually amazing to see how infectious that positivity is that coming out of him, because he hasn't stopped. Every day he's getting up and he's fighting a stronger fight. So that's why I feel so strongly about this, and I'm very passionate about what you're doing, Jono.
All right, thanks so much, and thanks so much for sharing that story with me. It's so good to hear that after all the challenges going through, he's rising to that challenge, and he's actually he's making good on what's presented with him now.
That was actually the second most proud I've ever seen Ryan. Obviously, when he had his little boy, that was definitely the most proud I've ever seen him. But the other day, when your brother walked out of the hospital there, I could see that was a serious proud moment for Ryan. And I can say this, but because I think Ryan's played quite a good sort of role model role to his brother. So yeah, very, very nice thing to see. Jono, okay, we spoke about you've got your organization that's on Facebook. Guys can contact you. I did a little talk the other day. There was a thing on men's health, and a lot of it was mental health. And when I started talk, I was listening to everyone talk, and I like you guys know nothing about aviation, because I said aviation at the beginning is a funny old game, but it kind of is. It's the one degree where your license expires basically every 6 months. If you don't perform in a simulator, you're going to get pulled offline. You not only do you have to perform to the standard that you performed last year, you have to perform to the standard that is now set by your company. They may have changed SOPs, there may have been changed laws. You have to implement that stuff into your own operation, and it's this continuous thing. It's like a continuously evolving thing that you have to keep yourself up to date with. On top of it, you've got this whole medical aspect as well. However, it's not gonna. I bet if I asked you, would you do it all again? You would absolutely become a pilot again. You just do not get into flying by mistake. And I think this is why this pandemic has been so difficult, particularly for the aviators. We've kind of stressed things like, go and do something, go and do your passion. Your passion is flying an airplane. What the hell are you supposed to do? That is your passion. You want to go up, you want to fly an airplane. Gavin Hill always comments here. Gavin, to me, Ryan, is a typical example of a guy who's just born to fly an airplane.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's a wonderful career, something we should be hell of a proud of. And it only makes it even more powerful when there are guys like you involved in it. And I think you need to play that critical role in this industry, even though you may not be flying right now. You're still employed, you've still got backing, and you're an important guy in this industry. Maybe, guys, we need to have a chat tomorrow. We need to play our part in this regard. We've got to do something, get hold of the right people, and let's get the story across the line. And let's, even if we can speed up this process by a few months, and at least we've done something. It's important. We can't just sit on the sidelines with this one. This is an important one.
Absolutely, definitely.
110%, Bryan.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic show tonight. Jono, we're going to have you on again because this needs to be a continuous thing. It's pointless just having this once and then, then out of sight, out of mind. So I think what will be important to have, like, even if it's a little segment, let's see where the progress has gone. Because you know where you are right now. It'll be nice to see, each month, where are things at. And yeah, maybe we can, help in that regard. But it'll be nice to keep this going. So, yeah, please be on standby or flight watch or home reserve, whatever you guys call it, for a quick little chat on the live show. I think it's important. But it really has been fantastic. Last words, guys.
From my side, Jono, just thanks again, very much for agreeing to jump on the show with us and sharing your story. I know it is difficult. Like you said, initially with this whole thing, you were embarrassed about it, but you certainly don't have anything to be embarrassed about. And again, from our side, if you need a platform, you've got one. And lastly, I just want to say good luck with everything. And stay strong, keep it going. And we're going to stay in touch for sure, man.
Thanks so much, guys.
John, I just, from my perspective, being on here talking about it might not have been that easy. You didn't come across that you were struggling to talk about it, which was great. But we understood how difficult it was for you. But, I think you always got to remember, just talking about it like you've done now, you don't understand how many pilots or individuals in the same boat who were too afraid, didn't know what to do, not taking action, who are suddenly now inspired to get out there, make a change, do something. There was a comment early on in the show, I can't remember who made the comment, that someone like you who's monitoring your health is so much better off than 99% of the population who don't actually give a shit. They don't even look at what they're doing. So just this, you have no idea the potential and the impact that just sharing this with us will bring to countless people. So thanks very much. It was brilliant. Really great to have you on.
Thanks so much, Brett. It's been an absolute pleasure so far. I really, really have enjoyed the platform you guys have presented, and you guys do a fantastic job. And thank you so much. I look forward to coming back on the show for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely, John. I will get you back on again soon. We'll chat about the progress that's been made. It's been fantastic to have you on the show tonight. A long time coming, and thank you to everyone who's taken the time to listen to us tonight. Really is, it makes us feel great. You get up, you do the show, and you always wonder, who's going to tune in and watch tonight. And what's quite amazing with this is people tend to watch the show even if they're not watching it here live with us, and we fully understand not everyone can take the time at 7 o'clock at night to actually watch the show, but it's so cool that people do take the time through the week. They do watch the show, and it does get out there. This live show is really doing well. It's so nice to have guests like yourself on, particularly, you speak so well. You speak from this area of you've got experience in the subject you're talking about. It's fantastic. We love what we do. We're going to carry on doing it. We're not going anywhere. It's a major passion for us, this podcast. And having causes like this that get behind us to keep pushing forward, man, it makes our life. It basically sums up why we started this thing in the first place. It really is a special thing for us to do. And thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, everyone who listened tonight. We'll be back next week, of course, for another live show. Of course, we'll push out the show on Friday, the traditional one in the studio. It's been a busy week for us three at Sim Aero. Things are picking up. Training is going crazy at the moment. The schools are busy. Sim training's busy. I was in the MD-80 today doing some training there. So, everything's going good. Look forward to hearing from you all. Please keep the messages coming on LinkedIn. Best place to contact me, Ryan, and Brett. I think we're on LinkedIn the most, so send us a message there. Otherwise, email any of us. And if you want to talk to any of us individually about a subject, please don't hesitate to do so. We'll make all of our numbers available to anyone who wants to have a chat. So don't hesitate to give us a shout. Thank you, everyone. Until next week, we'll say goodbye for now.
Cheers, guys.